Finance, it is the the Secretary's Department of Finance. For the Justice Department, it is the Secretary of Justice. But for PhilHealth, the Secretary only sits in the board, correct?
Correct, Your Honor.
One of
13.
no, 18. Because 5 ex officio, correct?
They're already included in the 13.
They're included, okay. One of the 13, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
So the board could have, and I just ask this for emphasis, the board could have not followed the DOF circular, correct? Legally.
Yes, they had that discretion.
They had that discretion not to follow the DOF circular. Not only because of their opinion that is illegal, but because they would have thought that for policy reasons, it would not have made sense, correct?
That is a possibility.
Yes. Can you again enumerate the external officers that the PhilHealth Board consulted before they made this decision?
The Office of the Government Corporate Counsel.
Legal, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
The Governance Commission for
Legal.
Government-owned and
Yes.
controlled corporations.
Legal
or the
also.
GCG for
Yes.
short.
And the other one is
Commission on Audit.
the Commission on Audit, again legal, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
So it could have been possible for the Board of PhilHealth to not follow the DOF circular, correct?
If upon consultation with these legal offices, they are convinced that they should not.
Yes, okay. I just wanted to ask that because Justice Mario showed a criminal provision. And if there is a violation, may kasama po ang Secretary of Finance, yung 13 board members. Just kidding. Of course, there is it's a criminal provision, and I'm sure that you have done everything to protect your officers in this particular case. Okay. So is 1D in the Appropriations Act also law?
It's part of the General Appropriations
So it
Act.
is law, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And therefore, when the DOF Secretary followed it, he was already following a legal provision, correct?
Yes, that
Yes.
is correct, Your Honor.
Subject to, of course, your discussion with Justice Ben Kagiwa yesterday relating to whether the harmonization that was done by the OGCC and now the OSG is really the acceptable way to harmonize, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes. Now, let us look at Section 11 and how PhilHealth can spend its funds. Okay. So may I ask that Section 11 be put into the monitors, in the monitors. Okay, your characterization of the fund was that it was not reserve fund, correct?
I'm sorry, Your Honor, which...
Your characterization of the fund that was transferred is that it is not reserve fund under Section 11, correct?
Yes, Your Honor, and also pursuant to Section 1D
Yes,
of the GAA.
It is, what do you call it? Surplus fund.
Fund balance.
Part of the fund balance surplus, it was not
Surplus.
used for the reserve fund. Again, can you, is it correct to understand that the limit of the reserve fund is a maximum?
The ceiling, yes, Your
Yes,
Honor.
it's a ceiling, it is not a floor, correct?
No.
And
it's
the
a ceiling.
ceiling is established by the provision of the Universal Healthcare Act. It is established by actuarial, correct?
Actuarial estimate
Yes.
of the next 2 years
Yes.
projected expenditures.
So what is regulated from your point of view is only the ceiling of the reserve fund, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Where it will be below the reserve, at what amount it will be determined by the Board of PhilHealth, correct?
Exactly, Your Honor.
And the Board of PhilHealth may not use actuarial in order to set the limit of the reserve fund from your point of view. Do I understand you correctly?
The ceiling will just be a guide so that the board will
In
be
other
able
words,
to
the
determine
actual level of the
actual
reserve,
amount.
the actual level of the reserve fund, from the point of view of the board as managers of PhilHealth, can be determined from other things. Like, sige, sinabi nyo ganyan yung statistical probability. However, we want to use the last 2 years in order to determine the actual level of the reserve fund. Is that possible?
That is correct, Your Honor.
For
There
so
are many
long-
policy considerations on the part of the board.
Yes. For so long as it is not above the statutory requirement, correct?
That is what Section 11 provides,
Okay, now,
yes.
stepping back, Section 11 therefore prohibits PhilHealth from putting too much into the reserve fund, correct?
Yes, that seems to be the purpose.
Am I correct in saying the reason for this is so that PhilHealth can actually have funds to be able to use to meet the objectives of the Universal Healthcare Act, correct?
Definitely, Your Honor. That's the purpose of putting a ceiling,
Yes,
so that
because-
money could be used
Yes.
for the operations.
Because the PhilHealth is not an investment vehicle. It
No,
is
it's not.
an agency that is critical for universal health care to provide the financing in order that we achieve universal health care, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. So in other words, from your point of view, anything below the reserve fund is all right according to the law.
Yes, that is
Okay.
correct, Your Honor.
And actually, we see this in some of the provisions, according to you, that there is a provision, later paragraphs of Section 11, where it says that any excess should be invested and that no excess of it should be transferred. And of course, there is Section 12 of the Universal Health Care Act. Can we flash Section 12? Section 12 actually states that for administrative costs, you cannot go beyond 7.5%. In other words, PhilHealth cannot give too many benefits to its staff. I will leave it to the chief to interpolate on that. 7.5% only. PhilHealth cannot go into very nice buildings. And the reason for this again is because the law wants that PhilHealth focuses its funds in order to address and achieve the purposes of the Universal Health Care Act. Is that correct?
Exactly, Your Honor.
So PhilHealth is not also a revenue-generating agency.
Not principally a revenue-generating agency.
It is a revenue-generating agency for itself, correct?
Yes, for itself
purposes.
and its operations.
Maybe I asked the wrong question. Is it a revenue-generating agency for the entire government?
No,
No, it cannot
not.
be, correct?
it's not, Your Honor.
When it transferred funds, did it become a revenue-generating agency for the entire government?
Not necessarily, Your Honor. It simply
Not necessarily.
complied with a directive.
When there were extra funds, because we found, you call it surplus funds. Okay, you have estimates on your contractual liabilities, etc. They had estimates on that, okay, and so on and so forth. So there were extra funds. Expenses were already covered. Their liabilities were already covered. There were extra funds. And PhilHealth now is telling us that at the time that it was transferred, it hadn't achieved all of the objectives of the Universal Health Care Act. Not only that, it had not achieved the goals of PhilHealth in relation to the Universal Health Care Act. Correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
So the transfer was illegal.
No, Your Honor.
Why is it not illegal?
Your Honor, the inability of PhilHealth to achieve milestones under the Universal Health Care Act is caused by many factors, including structural obstacles, absorptive capacity, and so forth and so on. In other words, Your Honor, much as PhilHealth would like to devote all of its resources to health care, simply it's not possible at that given point in time. So its resources lie there idle. So as a matter of cash
So,
management on the
Can
part
the funds
of
of
the government,
PhilHealth be used in order to fund, let us say, 5 million for the peace process?
Your Honor, the funds of PhilHealth,
No, just answer my question.
no.
Cannot be used.
No,
Can
Your
it be used for performance bonus of the members of the Solicitor General's office?
No, Your Honor.
What about the Supreme Court? Be
No, Your
careful. No, it cannot, right?
No, Your Honor. no.
Because from your perspective, and I also heard this from the Secretary of Finance, it has to be also for health, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Can it be used for a bridge in Guimaras?
No, Your Honor.
Cannot be, correct?
No.
Can it be used for paying the initial funds for some of our foreign loans?
No, Your Honor.
Cannot be. Now, I'm showing you your submission to us in relation to where Philhealth funds and PDIC funds were spent. And I am arranging it in the order of magnitude. So for purpose number 17, counterpart of foreign assisted project, health or not health?
Not health.
Not health.
Not health.
39 billion. Number 19, personnel benefit, 37 billion. Health or not health?
A portion of that would pertain to the Department of Health as
Okay.
well as
Am I
PhilHealth.
correct in saying that this was part of the tranche that was given to all government officials?
No, Your Honor.
Not all. This one, 37 billion?
I'm sorry,
Purpose number 19.
the 30...
Yes, the promise of the President to increase the salaries of government in 4 tranches. This was part of it, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. So you actually paid us with this, correct?
Your Honor, the funds that came from PhilHealth
Not this.
went to the National Treasury,
Okay, now-
not directly to a specific purpose.
Okay.
It went to the Treasury.
Yes. So if I ask you to submit to us which ones of these are health related, you will, correct?
Yes, we can.
And we will also ask the petitioners to actually take a look at this, including the SARO, because you submitted all the SAROs. Not
Yes,
the
Your
actual SAROs, but the purposes of the special allotment release orders. So that SARO, that they will now compute and see whether, if it's relevant to their argument. Okay. My other question is, okay, so there's a specific provision there in the Universal Declaration or Universal Healthcare Act that it has to be, all of it has to be for health purposes, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Yesterday, in your discussion with Justice Ben on harmonization, okay, he had this way of harmonizing Section 45 of the Administrative Code, which requires that there be an appropriation, and then the sin tax law, which earmarks the sin taxes for health, etc. So his solution was that yes, it is earmarked, but it must first be appropriated. Okay? But they cannot appropriate it for any other thing except for health. That was his way of harmonizing it. And you politely and respectfully agreed to disagree. Correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes. Okay. Now, but that is not the only way that we should look at what is the proper harmonization. It is not your word versus the word of a sitting justice. One, justice. So, may pag-asa ka pa kasi 14 kami. Okay? Majority of the justices, etc. Okay. We have to look at what the Constitution provides, correct?
Of course, Your Honor.
So, is the right to health a concrete, solid right? Or is it hortatory only?
Pardon, Your Honor?
Is it hortatory? Does it
Hortatory.
only exhort government to look at the right to health? Or is the right to health already a fundamental right? It is an entitlement given to every citizen of the Republic.
Your Honor, I have to qualify my answer because right to health
Yes.
is a very broad and general right to speak of.
Okay.
But
I will show you Article 3, Section 1 of the Constitution. Article 3, Section 1 says, no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property. Yet, in the decisions of the Supreme Court, life there is a very concrete thing in relation to due process. And then we go to Section 4 of Article 3, which I did not have it prepared, but freedom of speech, freedom of expression, that is very broad, right? So it is of the same nature, correct?
yes, Your Honor.
Yes, okay. The right to life in Section 1 also means the right to health, correct?
Yes, I
Had
would
there
say
been no
so.
other provision on health in our Constitution, it is possible for the court who are more enlightened to actually say, embedded in the concept of life Never mind what the American founding fathers will say. Never mind what the Trump court will say. But insofar as the Philippine court is concerned, because we see so many people, 57%, according to SWS, poverty, hunger. Okay? Therefore, our interpretation can be, if there were no other provision, that the right to life includes the right to health. Correct?
Yes, Your Honor, but there are other provisions in the Constitution pertaining to the
Yes, that's-
right to
Exactly.
health.
That's where I'm going to. Because it is not only the right to life, but before I go there, in this particular provision, it simply says that there is a right and it only prohibits government from interfering from those rights. Correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Because that is without due
Without due process of law.
shall be deprived, which means there is no intervention of government. So it's a prohibition. It's negative, correct?
Yes.
But if you look at the other provisions, let us start with Article 2, Section 9. Okay? It is very clear here that the state shall promote. It is not may, but shall. A just and dynamic social order, but I wanted to highlight, free the people from poverty through policies that provide adequate social services, promote full employment, a rising standard of living, and an improved quality of life for all. This is a constitutional provision, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And it is not a political platform.
No.
It is a constitutional provision which says that the state is there not only to bother us with traffic controls, but also because, let's just go to Section 9, but also because the target should be to free our people from poverty through policies that provide adequate social services, promote full employment, rising standard of living, improve quality of life for all. I do not see there infrastructure, although it can be indirect, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
But
That is
certainly the priority is provide social services, correct?
correct. Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Next, Section 10. That these rights have to be interpreted in the context of a collective. And therefore, it says, the state also shall promote social justice. And therefore, between persons that have the capability and persons that do not have the capability, our resources should be focused more on the people without. Correct?
That is correct.
Kung sino ang wala, siya dapat ang tutulungan ng ating pamahalaan.
Tama
Correct?
po.
Yes. And that's why corruption is so bad, right?
Yes.
Because it serves the powerful. Correct? And it is the powerful that get more out of our own funds rather than they using it for people that do not have a home, that cannot eat 3 square meals a day, correct?
Agree, Your Honor.
Yes, and therefore it says here to promote social justice. Okay, next is a favorite provision, Section 11. Our whatever policy that we do, the Constitution actually says that we value the dignity of every human person and not only guarantee, it guarantees full respect for human rights, correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And health is a human right.
Yes, Your Honor.
You agree? Okay, next. Therefore, next is Article 15. Shall protect and promote the right to health of the people. So it is here. There is a right to health, correct?
Exactly, Your Honor.
And it also says that the right to health is not only government's concern, but it also concern of every individual, except that it recognizes, the beauty of this provision recognizes that sometimes we have fake news. In other words, things like you have to drink a horse medicine in order to protect yourself against COVID. I will not mention the medicine. And therefore, part of the role of government is to instill health consciousness among our people, correct?
Exactly, Your Honor.
Yes. And of course, you have Article 13, Section 11. I will just flash it. And Article 13, Section 12. Okay? And in Article 13, shall establish and maintain an effective food and drug regulatory system. And this was the provision that was used in a recent case, Department of Health versus Philippine Tobacco Institute, GR number 200431, July 13, 2021. I did not memorize, I am reading it. Okay. So again, when we harmonize it, therefore, these provisions, a Universal Health Care Act, should we not interpret the harmonization to give effect to the right to health rather than to support the other goals of government? What do you think?
Primarily, Your Honor, to comply with these state policies on the right to health.
Therefore, when funds were taken from PhilHealth and used for the peace process, I am for the peace process, as you may know, just to clarify. It became unconstitutional.
Your Honor, the money taken from PhilHealth, as I said earlier,
Was not used.
went to the Treasury, commingled there in the Treasury for proper application to the various uses
so it's worse.
enumerated in the unprogrammed appropriations.
Yes, so it's worse. Because it was put in a fund not for health in general, but it was commingled and then bahala na. You gave it to the Department of Budget and Management in order that it be. So there is no way that we can see how much was actually transferred, 60 billion. There is no way that we can see that all of it was done for health.
There is a way,
There is
Your
a
Honor,
way.
because
Okay.
we have a list of the SAROs listed, or rather issued by the Department of Budget and Management, and showing for which particular purpose under the unprogrammed appropriations that particular SARO was applied.
Okay.
And we have seen this, and we have found that almost the entire amount of 60 billion pesos, which came from the fund balance of PhilHealth,
Okay.
was applied
Thank
to
you.
health-related projects.
Thank you, Mr. Solicitor General. I will await your submission in your memoranda following this trend, and we are assuming, of course, that it was part of the general fund, not part of the reserve fund, correct?
Yes, Your Honor,
Yes.
that is correct.
Because if it was part of the reserve fund, we are in trouble, correct?
Yes, that's very true.
Definitely. May I now ask the Secretary of Finance to take the podium again? Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And I listened intently.
Thank you for the pleasure, Your Honor.
Yes. I listened intently to your presentation. I listened intently also to your answers to the questions of my colleagues. I hope that I will not need to repeat some of my questions. And if I do, my apologies. And I suppose it's just for emphasis. And I understand your role as a fundraiser, but that is a statement that is too broad because you also determine the types of taxes, etc. You are also part of the economic team of the government.
That is correct.
My first question is, why did the government opt to insert a provision in the General Appropriations Act rather than simply put amendments to the charter of PDIC, not in question here, or to the charter of charter of PhilHealth?
That was the decision of Congress when they passed the General Appropriations Act.
But knowing now the issues that are now being raised, and having been a legislator for 30 years,
Almost 30 years.
almost 30 years, from the House to the Senate,
That is
including the
correct.
local government, would you have opted to amend the law?
I
Just to
would-
amend the law and put a provision there to assist the deficits, to assist unprogrammed, etc.
We will be amending the charter of PhilHealth soon, but not necessarily for this purpose.
Not for this purpose.
Yes.
Okay. Just to clarify also from your statement, did I catch you correct when you said, did I understand you correctly when you said this was a temporary stopgap
correct.
measure, correct?
That is correct.
And that it will not be repeated again.
That is correct. It is only found in the general appropriations of 2024.
However, there were executive orders in the past
Yes,
that were issued, correct?
that is correct.
But we can never be sure that there will be another situation in the future,
That is correct.
and hopefully not during your term, the next
It-
3.
It is possible during the
Yes.
Trump administration, they just imposed additional tariffs on the Philippines.
Okay, so we cannot dismiss this case on the ground that it is not capable of repetition. So you are saying that we do need to rule on this case, correct?
That would depend.
That would depend on whether it is for you or against you, correct?
Not necessarily,
Yes,
because as I see it, there is no one injured.
yes. Anyway, again, the position of the other side is different.
Yes.
But we respect the position of government in this case.
Yes.
Just to
And
show
we
you.
also respect the
Yes.
position of the opposition.
Yes, and I am sure that you listen to the health advocates and that
Yes.
it is very important to listen to the voices of the people that critique government because
Yes.
it pushes us to become better than who we are.
I have become a better legislator by doing so.
Yes. Now, just to show you, again, that I understood it correctly, the budget deficits through the years, can you flash it, the ones that we have? So we have been suffering through a lot of budget deficits, and here we are looking at the percentage of budget deficits on our GDP for the past years.
That is correct.
It has been increasing. And this is worrisome
Yes.
because this means that we have to fund it in a way that will curtail our growth. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Yes. Just to show you that I understood you. Next is that borrowing is difficult because debt servicing through the years has also been increasing. So our data shows, next slide please, that our servicing of our debt has been increasing through the years.
That is correct, especially now that interest rates are going up.
Yes,
Or have
because
gone
of
up, yes.
activities made by a certain president and the other retaliatory tariffs, among others, correct?
Even prior to.
Even prior to that.
As I did mention, you have two hot wars, a cold war, a trade war,
Yes.
and now a bigger trade war.
I understand. So in 2024, you were faced with 34% debt servicing. Almost 1/3 of the total of our budget equivalent
No.
was for debt servicing. Not correct?
In terms of interest expense, roughly about 13%.
No, this is debt servicing, which
Yes,
includes
let
the...
me qualify.
Yes.
In terms of interest expense, more or less 13% of the entire national budget. With regard to principal, it's roughly 1 trillion.
Okay.
So all told, you're talking about a deficit of 1.5 plus 1
So it's
trillion.
even worse.
It's about 2.5 trillion a year.
Okay, so it's even worse than our own statistics, correct? little bit.
Depending on how you look at it. So the actual statistics may not be totally accurate.
Okay.
Yeah.
So also that there is a difference between a local loan from our own treasury
Yes, correct.
and an external loan, correct?
That is correct.
And therefore, that's very important to consider.
That
And
is correct.
This is what we have in terms of our external loan, correct? And can I-
75% of our debt is domestic and 25% is foreign.
Yes, but 25% is nice to hear, but if you look at the magnitude of it, it is quite large.
Roughly 10 trillion is domestic and 5 trillion is foreign.
Okay, so when we
So
speak
mas
in...
malaki yung domestic.
Yes, but we still have 5 trillion in terms of external, and
Correct.
our statistics show that a lot of it is really to the multilateral creditors.
That is correct. But it's
Yes.
also important to note that our gross international reserves are higher than our foreign debt.
Yes, I am sure that you are also looking at the other aspects. But for my purposes, I am sorry that we were unable to do the research for 2025 for the bilateral creditors. But sufficient for my purposes is just to show you that members of the court agree where you are coming from.
Yes.
But
Thank you.
you must agree with me that the fact of a deficit is not necessarily bad from a certain economic point of view, called
For us
modern monetary economics, correct?
Okay. That would depend. There are benchmarks to follow. A sustainable debt or deficit is roughly 3% of GDP. Last year, we were 5.7% of GDP. We achieved a credit rating upgrade last year. We expect another credit rating upgrade if we follow our path, that this year our deficit should be 5.3%, next year 4.7%, the following year should be 4.2%, and that by 2028
Yes.
we reduce that to 3.7%, 3.8%.
Yes.
Then we are fiscally sustainable.
What I mean is
Yes.
that deficits per se, from a
Yes.
certain perspective, I speak of Stephanie Kelton, the deficit myth, Warren Mosler, Bill Mitchell, L. Randall Ray.
Yes.
Okay.
So deficits are not bad.
Not bad.
Yes.
The limit is actually inflation because we can
That's
print
one.
money.
In terms of I know where you're coming from. In terms
Yes.
of modern monetary theory, that has been extensively discussed in the DOF and the BSP, and I'm a lone voice there as far as that is concerned. But having said that, like I said, in the case of the Philippines, we need to follow certain benchmarks. Maybe modern monetary theory is not too much applicable in the Philippines because we are not a reserve currency.
Yes, but we do print our own currency,
That is
and therefore
correct.
it's important to understand that
Yes.
for our currency, it is inflation and real resource availability that's important. I'm just saying this
That is
because
correct.
I am looking at it from the lens of law and economics
Yes.
when I try to determine whether the context of transferring the funds
Yes.
from the point of view of the constitutional requirements to also provide for health
Yes.
can be constitutional. But
Yes.
again, it's there. Okay.
It's worth noting that social services in the budget is the biggest pie compared to infrastructure.
Okay.
Hospitals are also infrastructure and
Yes.
social services.
Yes. So, just for my curiosity, and I hope you
Yes, sir.
can excuse me for this question, when you say you are the lone voice, you are the lone voice for modern monetary economics?
Theory,
You're the lone voice. Okay.
yes, in the DOF.
I am happy to hear that,
Yes, sir.
but I do not know if the others will be happy to hear that. I am happy to hear that. Okay. Let's look at your daily math for government.
Yes,
15.8 billion pesos a day
is what we are spending.
spending.
And when we pass the budget, many people think that you have 5.7 trillion in the bank. That is not true.
Yes,
We
I
have to
understand.
collect 11.7
11.7
billion a day.
and 4.1 billion by loans, correct?
That's only for the deficit.
Okay, now I see your point from the point of view of income. But what I want to invite you to look at is the expense. The expense side.
Yes,
And the expense side, which means 50.8 billion, that can include funds which are the subject of corruption, correct?
that is correct.
Yes. So when we say
But
15.8...
I would hasten to add that there is more corruption on the revenue side than on the expenditure side.
Yes, but still, when we look at 15.8 billion a day, we can take a look at not only corruption, outright stealing from people, the people's money, but also inefficiencies, correct?
That is correct.
Correct. And therefore, the gap that you need to fill in can sometimes be addressed not only by transferring funds, but also by attending to accountability, correct?
Definitely.
And accountability includes following the rule of law, correct?
That is correct.
And therefore, it is very important that we follow our SPJI, Strategic Plan for Judicial Intervention, and our current thrust towards integrity in our court, integrity at judiciary.gov.ph, correct? And we are hoping that,
I'm not familiar with
Yes.
the judiciary, but I would assume you're correct.
yes, and well, I am. On SPJI at least,
Yes,
okay?
yes. For sure.
I needed to mention that because
Yes,
alangan naman si Justice Mario lang magbabanggit, okay? But the point there again is, when we look at expenses and we look at collection, it is also that there are leakages along the way, correct?
That is correct.
And that the stopgap measure of actually transferring 60 billion from PhilHealth and 100 something from PDIC,
PDIC 104? roughly?
104 from PDIC was really a stopgap measure that did not address the systemic problem, correct?
Yeah, I think it does.
Well, it does for the moment. but it does also for teaching a lesson to these government corporations from your point of view, correct?
Yes, it's teaching a lesson to the government corporations because if you did do that with PhilHealth, they would not have improved their benefit packages. If we do not reduce, as you correctly pointed out, the reserve requirement, then there will be less money for increasing benefit packages to reduce out-of-pocket expenses.
Okay. So, to solve our economic dilemma, we are not yet in crisis, but if we do not handle this well, we can be in crisis, correct? There is,
That is correct.
there is an argument to be made
Yes.
that corruption, if it has become bigger, should be addressed.
Yes,
You agree?
correct, and that includes the fiscal health of the nation.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you very
That
much.
was very enlightening.
Thank you.
Thank you. May I now
Maraming salamat
ask
po.
Sunny, Africa? Okay, you may stay in your place. Okay. Mr. Africa, are you familiar with the statistics, with the recent SWS survey on hunger that was recently published?
Yes, sir. Yes, Your Honor.
Yes. Am I correct to say that 27.2% of our households, according to that study, in March, is suffering through some form of involuntary hunger?
According to the SWS survey, yes, Your Honor.
Yes. And if I did make a rough computation, that would amount to 7.5 million households. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, but it is not only those that are hungry that suffer from the impact of not having the proper funding in order to attend to health issues, but more than them, correct?
Yes, Your Honor, as you mentioned earlier.
Yes. And according to your studies, what is now the reasonable living daily income for Filipino families?
Our computation of the family living wage for a family of 5 is at about 1,227 pesos.
1,200
27 pesos on the national average
daily for a family or for a person?
for a family of 5.
And minimum wage averages?
It's 645 in NCR. It's 361 in BARM. National average is about, I think, 435. I think 450 pesos.
Okay. Now, what we heard from government is that there's absorptive capacity problems in the Philhealth. Therefore, they removed funds because that was the right economic thing to do in order to be able to fund the other projects which may affect also the health of our citizens. Okay? Do you accept that?
No, Your Honor, because the opportunity cost of the impact on lowering PhilHealth indirect beneficiaries, we did see a fall in the number of PhilHealth indirect beneficiaries because already of budget cuts. It was, I think, 642 million in indirect beneficiaries in 2023, down to about 21 million in 2024. That immediately impacts on, we believe, roughly 60 to 70% of poor and vulnerable Filipinos, including, according to the Bangko Sentral, 75% of families who do not have any savings, whether in the bank, at home, in their pockets. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Africa.
Thank you.
Ms. Susara, I am confused about your statement regarding unprogrammed funds during the in your opening. In a nutshell, not more than 3 minutes, can you tell us again your view of the unprogrammed funds as it has morphed today?
Okay, so originally, the unprogrammed funds were just standby appropriation. So it's a list of general line items of appropriation which the executive branch can trigger release of funds for only on certain instances. Those are 3. 1, if there are excess revenue collections. Number 2, if there are new revenue measures. Number 3, if there are foreign loans. But it has morphed in the last 3 years. In fact, even in the 2025 budget, there's still bloated and program appropriations. What's been happening is that many priority programs and projects for social services and infrastructure projects that were originally part of the programmed appropriations, which in simple terms is the portion of the budget that has guaranteed cash funding from the different sources of financing, have been essentially deprioritized and placed into the unprogrammed appropriations. And so that is the reason why on the expenditure side, there is a huge problem. And this is what necessitated the need to sweep the cash from the GOCC. So in my view, it was an unnecessary problem. Why do I say this? It's because when the president, when the executive branch submits the budget or the national expenditure plan program to Congress, they factor in the fiscal program, precisely all of the things that the good Secretary of Finance mentioned: revenues, expenditures, deficit, and debt. The problem is the bicameral conference committee included a lot, hundreds of billions of insertions, and placed them, essentially replaced what were taken out and placed in the unprogrammed appropriations with a lot of many other programs, primarily in the budgets of DSWD and the DPWH. So what happened there is all of the things that were slashed from the programmed appropriations now park in the unprogrammed appropriations. Remember, this is the part of the budget that doesn't have guaranteed cash cover. But they are priority projects. The government concedes that they are priority projects, and so they need to be funded. And so because of that situation, which has been happening for the past 4 fiscal years, we are in a situation where the fiscal oversight agencies have to grapple with raising additional revenues, raising additional non-tax sources of financing in order to plug the unfunded and programmed appropriations.
Thank you for that enlightenment. It is also part of the context that we will want to take into consideration. And I am sure that you have the numbers to support your claim. And not now. And when you will be required to submit your memoranda as amicus, then you will probably help us with the proper numbers as well as the primary sources for all of this.
I will, Your Honors.
Thank you. And finally, Dr. Orville Solon, having heard all of what you have heard so far for the past 5 sittings and the clarifications of the lawyers, from your point of view, from an economic point of view, would it have been better not to transfer from Philhealth?
After listening to the hearings, I now believe that the transfer, whether or not, regardless of how it will be decided by the court, has already generated the kinds of actions that I thought, as an economist, the incentive effects, already in terms of addressing problems, intrinsic problems in the PhilHealth program.
Because in your opening, you did say that, to tell PhilHealth that they had a problem, the idle funds had to be used and transferred. And right now, not only is there a new precedent, that there are new programs that are now being done by PhilHealth, although, of course, as a citizen, and for the citizens that are listening right now, for the people that are listening right now, it's not yet enough. And it will never be enough until they will have the full kind of universal health care. And I hope that we do not judge our people that they demand that they do not continue to suffer. Correct?
I am one with everybody in the room, which points out that the Universal Health Care Act is severely underfunded. But my outrage comes not because it's not funded, but because there's funds that could have been used. My apprehension now, my remaining apprehension is, can this attention that is given by the public through this discussion with the court be sustained so that PhilHealth actually does good its promises to undertake these reforms that has been discussed?
Thank you, Doctor. And that is beyond the court, and I think the Chief and the other Associate Justices, we feel that we have done our part for these oral arguments, but abangan ang susunod na kabanata because we are yet to rule. Chief, may I just call one other person, Mr. Attorney Sani Matdula. Magsasaka? Ay, magnagawa. Just a very brief point. Kayo po ay kinatawan ng mga manggagawa. Tama po ba?
Tama po, Your Honor.
And para lang sa kaalaman ng Korte Suprema at mga hukom dito, maliwanag na ang aming mga karanasan bilang hukom, bilang individual at ang aming mga pamilya ay ibang-iba sa nararanasan ng ating mga ordinaryong manggagawa. Totoo ho ba yun?
Maaari po.
Na kapag kami ay magkasakit, madalas meron kami mga kaibigan na pwedeng puntahan bukod sa PhilHealth at saka sa judiciary, meron kaming HMO, pero karamihan sa mga magsasaka, kung minsan, nakasalalay lang sila sa tulong na binibigay ng gobyerno.
Totoo po yan.
And sa tulong ng gobyerno, hindi lang PhilHealth, pero kung minsan kumakagat na lang sa patalim, pupunta sila sa kanilang mayor, congressman, councilor, etc. Tama? Tama ho ba?
Tama po, Your Honor.
Yes, and gusto ko lang malaman po sa inyo na ang aming tungkulin ay hindi lamang the rule of law, kundi the rule of law, but also to do justice. Tama ho ba yan?
Tama po, Your Honor. Kaya po sa aming petisyon in intervention, ay hiningi namin sa Korte Suprema na ibalik ang pondo ng PhilHealth sapagkat sa tingin namin ito po ay a negative social justice measure na ginawa ng gobyerno.
So kapag may dalawang technical na paraan na ma-justify namin, isa para sa katarungan at isa hindi masyado para sa katarungan, dun dapat kami kung saan we do our names kasi justice kami. Na we do justice. Nagagawin namin ang social justice o ang katarungan. Tama ho ba?
Tama po kayo, Your Honor.
Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Chief.
Thank you very much, Senior Associate Justice Marvic Jonen. May I call on Justice Ko for his additional interpellation questions?
Thank you, Chief. Anybody from the government? I would like to ask on the intricacies of Section 37 on appropriation. Who can explain to me the government side of 37?
Section 37.
Section 37. The appropriation.
Sa appropriation.
The sources of
appropriation. The Solicitor General can answer that, I think. It's part of your presentation, Mr. Solicitor General.
sa bagay na umpisa na ni
Such.
Justice Mario kanina, for transparency purposes also, I work under Solicitor General Guevara when he was the Secretary of Justice. I was Undersecretariat for a few months under him. Also, banggitin ko na rin si ASG George Orta. When I was in DOJ as Undersecretary, he was my Assistant Secretary. So, ikuan lang yun. Clarification na. Okay, I'll proceed to Section 37. Section 37 enumerates the sources for funding the universal healthcare law. Do you agree with me, Mr. Solgen?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Under 37, it appears that there are 6 sources enumerated: A, B, C, D, and F.
That is correct, Your Honor.
Okay. Now, these 6 sources of funding is not exclusively for PhilHealth. It is also funding for DOH because DOH is also an agency that would implement the universal health care.
Exactly, Your Honor.
Okay.
For the DOH and for
PhilHealth.
PhilHealth.
So DOH and PhilHealth are the two agencies, principal agencies, that would implement the universal health care law.
That is correct, Your Honor.
Okay. Now, does these six sources of funding are independent sources of funding, either to DOH or to PhilHealth?
No, Your Honor. They are supposed to be included in the GA, all of these funds.
Okay.
And it will be up to Congress to appropriate either to PhilHealth
or to DOH.
or to DOH or both.
Okay. However, if you notice, section or paragraph D refers to premium contribution of members. These refer to direct members, those who pay premiums, right, Mr. Solicitor General?
Yes, Your Honor.
So therefore, with respect to paragraph D, your statement earlier might not be true in the sense that these are contribution of direct members not passing through GAA.
I think so. I make that kind of modification, Your Honor, because the direct contributions from the excuse me, Your Honor. Just conferring for a second with
Yes.
the Secretary of Finance. Your Honor, just for qualification, members here in subsection D also include government employees, and
Yes,
therefore they are covered also in the GAA.
Yes, but it also includes employees from the private sector that contributes their premium but does not go through GAA because it's directly
Yes, that is
limited
correct,
to-
Your Honor. That goes directly to
Okay.
PhilHealth.
Now, so therefore, does not follow that the six sources does not necessarily go through the GAA.
That portion pertaining to the premium payments of direct contributors.
Okay. Now, letter E refers to annual appropriation for DOH. So this is a subsidy or allocation in the budget under the GAA that Congress allocates for DOH for the implementation of the Universal Healthcare Act.
That is correct, Your Honor.
Okay. Now, let us go to subsection B and C. Letter A, it was already extensively discussed earlier in previous oral arguments. Now, for letter B, this represents 50% national government share. I'll read letter B. 50% of the national government share from the income of PAGCOR as provided in PD 1869 as amended, provided that the funds raised for this purpose shall be transferred to PhilHealth at the end of each quarter, subject to the usual budgeting, accounting, and auditing regulations, provided further that the funds shall be used by PhilHealth to improve its benefit packages. Now, do we have a computation of how much for, let us say, 2023 or 2024, how much is the 50% share of PAGCOR?
I think that will be available from the Department of Budget and Management.
Can we have an estimate?
Okay.
Can you have an estimate for, what year is that?
Your Honor, so based on our records, the 50%, the share of PhilHealth to the 50% national government share from 2019 to 2024 is an accumulated balance of 85.22 billion pesos, of which a a portion has already been appropriated in the GAAs of 2023 and 2024, Your Honor.
So let us just make an estimate for the 5-year period. How much is it again?
From the 5-year, this is not an estimate. These are the collections that is going to be allotted to PhilHealth, Your Honor.
Okay.
For PAGCOR, it's 85.22 billion.
So 85, let's just put it at 85 billion.
Yeah. And for PCSO, if we're going
Later, we
Okay.
discuss later PCSO.
Okay.
So for purposes of PAGCOR, for the 5-year period, it's 85 billion. Section subparagraph B directs that the funds raised for this purpose shall be transferred to PhilHealth at the end of each quarter, subject to the usual budgeting, accounting, and auditing rules and regulations. And provided further that the funds shall be used by PhilHealth to improve its benefit package. If you collected, the share of PAGCOR, 50% share, does PAGCOR directly remit the amount to PhilHealth?
No, Your Honor. It is remitted to the Treasury in accordance with the joint circular signed by all of the relevant parties back in 2022.
Would you not consider that to be in violation of the law, because the law directly mandates that the funds raised for this purpose shall be transferred to PhilHealth, not to the general fund?
Your Honor, this is actually one of the discussions between the national government and PhilHealth, and it was raised to the to the Department of Justice back then under the administration of our current Solgen. And the issue really is the reconciliation between those following phrases, subject to the usual budgeting, accounting, and auditing rules and regulations, and then the final provision that such amounts have to be included in the GAA and appropriated under the national government subsidy to PhilHealth. So that was the point of contention, and with the ruling of the DOJ, all parties agreed in their joint circular I mentioned earlier na this is how we shall interpret or implement the provision of the law. But this was thoroughly discussed, arbitrated by the DOJ.
Okay. Now, the limitation there for the transfer of funds from PAGCOR directly to PhilHealth is that it should be subject to the usual budgeting, accounting, and auditing rules, as you have mentioned.
Yes, Your Honor.
The fact that it was coursed through another fund, which is the general fund, not directly to PhilHealth, is that a limitation on budgeting, accounting, or auditing rules?
Your Honor, as a general rule, all resources, all income of the national government shall be given to the National Treasury. And if there is going to be a final destination, then it shall go through the various budgetary processes, including, of course, the inclusion in the GAA and whatever budgetary regulations issued by the DBM.
Okay.
COA as
So
well.
that is one, on my side, an issue, whether or not under this provision, the funds, the 50% from PAGCOR, should go directly to PhilHealth, as I read it, because the provision is very clear. The funds raised for this purpose shall be transferred to PhilHealth, but subject to your interpretation. Now, another issue on this paragraph B. You mentioned that you have collected 85 billion for 5 years, representing 50%.
Yes,
This
Your Honor.
85 billion that was collected from PAGCOR and as directed under this paragraph B, did this amount go to PhilHealth?
Your Honor, in the GAAs of 2023 and 2024, there is an amount allocated in the GAA for those years, 21 billion each year. So for a total of 42 billion that included in the GAA. As far as I know, there has been no request for an NCA or notice of cash allocation from the PhilHealth to the DBM.
You're not answering my question.
No,
my question is, I want to repeat. Let us say for 2019, the collection from PAGCOR is, let us say, 10 billion. The 50% is 10 billion. Assuming you're correct, that the 10 billion went to the Treasury first. Because, as you said, it is subject to budgetary regulation. But ang question ko dito, is the 10 billion that was collected from PAGCOR, did it went to PhilHealth? Because, as stated in this paragraph, the funds raised for this purpose shall be transferred to PhilHealth. The total amount shall be transferred to PhilHealth. Assuming that it passed through the National Treasury, nevertheless, you have to keep that 10 billion and give it to PhilHealth as directed in this paragraph B.
Yes, Your Honor. Okay, the answer to your question for 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022 was that no, there was no transfer because there was no allocation in the GAA of those respective years.
So therefore, would you agree with me that you violated Section B? Because Section B said you have to transfer the government share, 50% of that. You have to transfer it to PhilHealth, regardless of whether you passed through the National Government Fund, you have still to give it to PhilHealth, the 10 billion.
Your Honor, the transfer is subject to the processes. So we cannot unilaterally bypass through all of those processes, especially the most important part, the inclusion in the GAA.
What are these processes? The only limitation mentioned is usual budgeting, accounting, and auditing rules. That's the only limitation.
Right.
That's the actual withholding of the 50%. Kung hindi mo binigay yung 50% o nagbigay ka lang ng 5 billion, is that one of those limitations considered as budget, accounting, or auditing? Budgeting, accounting, and auditing rules are merely procedural. You have to prepare a ledger, you have to prepare everything. But the amount, the 10 billion, must still be transferred to PhilHealth.
Your Honor, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So the standard process for such transfers goes as follows. Number one, such a line item must be included in the GAA of that year. If there is no GAA item, then there's simply nothing the Treasury can do because the Constitution commanded us that no money shall be paid out of the Treasury unless otherwise appropriated by Congress. That's the first requirement. The second requirement, Your Honor, is that even with that GAA, then the next step is for the PhilHealth to request, through a special budget request from the DBM, the amounts that was allocated to them under the GAA. And of course, such a process will include documentary submissions, etc. Upon the successful evaluation of the DBM, then they will issue a document called the Special Allotment Release Order and together with the Notice of Cash Allocation that authorizes the Treasury to transfer such amounts directly to
Mr.
PhilHealth.
Witness, your explanation is contrary to what is stated. Very simple English in paragraph B. Now let's go to, okay.
Your Honor,
Oh.
may I add something to
Please.
the discussion? Section 37, the opening sentence says, the amount necessary to implement this act shall be sourced from the following, etc. Emphasis on the word necessary. The last paragraph of Section 37 speaks again of necessary. Could we have it flashed likewise, Your Honor? The last paragraph, I understand, of Section 37. Section 37. Which one? Your Honor, Section 37, last paragraph. the amount necessary to implement the provisions of this act shall be included in the GAA and shall be appropriated under the DOH and national government subsidy to PhilHealth. I will not mention the last sentence anymore, it's not relevant. What I'm trying to say, Your Honor, is notwithstanding the identification of sources and the specific purposes for these funds, it would appear under Section 37, the opening paragraph and the last paragraph, that Congress is given the discretion to determine the amount as may be necessary to implement the provisions of the Universal Healthcare Act.
Okay. I'll go to that later. With respect to the first paragraph, in relation to the last paragraph on the word necessary. But aside from PAGCOR, we have also the charity fund and contributions from PCSO. Same provision, nakalagay dito, that the funds raised for this purpose shall be transferred to PhilHealth at the end of each quarter, subject to usual budgeting, accounting, and auditing rules. And I presume your answer to my question relative to paragraph B would also be the same for paragraph C.
Yes, Your Honor, but I would like to inform the Honorable Court that per our records, that amount remitted by PCSO for PhilHealth as of end 2024 is about 6.84 billion pesos.
So with respect to B and C, you have your own interpretation. My simple reading of this provision says that the share of government in PAGCOR and PCSO, a portion of which supposed to be given to PhilHealth. Sabi ninyo, bawal yang direct remittance. Assuming bawal yan, dumaan yan sa National Treasury. But for B and C, sinasabi dyan na yung amount collected na yan, reserve yan for PhilHealth. You cannot touch that amount. You cannot reduce that. Yun ang understanding ko. You have a different interpretation. So that's an issue before us. Okay. Now, let us now go to the what Mr. Soljen mentioned with respect to the amount necessary. I'll read the last paragraph. The amount necessary to implement the provision of this act shall be included in the GAA and shall be appropriated under the DOH and the national government subsidy to PhilHealth. That's the first sentence. As mentioned by Mr. Soljen, the second sentence medyo hindi naman applicable. No? So, but this sentence refers to paragraph E and paragraph F. If you go to paragraph E and F, it refers to annual appropriations of the DOH included in the GAA. Letter F, national government subsidy to PhilHealth included in the GAA. With respect to letter E, that is the share of DOH to implement the National Healthcare Program. Is that correct? With respect to letter E, that is the share of the government has to give money to DOH for DOH to implement its
Yes, Your Honor.
program under the National Healthcare Program.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Letter F, it refers to the national government subsidy to PhilHealth included in the GAA. This refers to my understanding is the premium contribution of indirect contributors given by the government as included in the GAA. Am I correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Now, earlier, or for previous oral arguments, it appears to me that letter A, the increment sin tax collection, were used to cover letter F. Am I correct? That is what the government is doing. Collection from sin taxes.
Yes,
Yan
Your
ang
Honor. This will
ginamit.
be part of the general funds from which F will have to be implemented.
Yes. So apparently, on the part of the government, kung anong collection sa syntax, or even PAGCOR, or even PCSO, yan ang ginamit pagpuno ng National Government Subsidy to PhilHealth. Am I correct?
Yes, Your Honor, that is
Okay.
correct.
These are sources.
But my understanding of 37 is totally different. Because 37 enumerates different independent sources of funding. Kung ang interpretation ng government is that the national government subsidy to PhilHealth included in the GAA as F would be sourced from A, B, and C, that paragraph or that 37 would appear as follows. Letter F, national government subsidy to PhilHealth included in the GAA to be sourced from syntax, PAGCOR, or PCSO. Hindi siya separate A, B, and C. Ang ginawa ng gobyerno dito, yung A collection, yung B collection, C collection, yun ang binigay sa national subsidy ng PhilHealth on the part of indirect contributors. And then, ang tinatakutan ko pa, yung collection ng tatlo na yan, kulang na kulang pa. Mas konti pa sa binigay for subsidy. That is my understanding if you read 37. Because if we follow your understanding of 37 on A, B, and C, A, B, and C should be subparagraph of F. Hindi siya independent source of income or support for PhilHealth. What can you say?
We'll explain that, Your Honor.
If I may, Your Honor. Your Honor, it was already alluded to by the OGCC, but where our records from 2014 until 2024, the syntax laws 10351 and of course 11346, pardon if there's a wrong mistake in the numbering, the total allocation from the syntaxes that should be given to PhilHealth amounts to about 534 billion pesos for that decade, for that entire decade. But during the same period, Your Honor, the GAA has included in the subsidy component to PhilHealth an amount worth 635.36 billion pesos. So the difference between the two is 101 billion pesos. And it is this difference at 101 billion, it is the amount that is being referenced by that F. It is shall we say, a placeholder to account for the possibility that the government can provide more resources to PhilHealth, more than what the syntax collections are, depending, of course, on the need of PhilHealth. So that would be the factual context that I would like to use to interpret that provision. Then the second minor clarification, with your kind indulgence, Your Honor, is that B and C are not going to be paying for premium subsidies of indirect contributors. These are for the expansion of benefit packages. It is highlighted by the representative by the PhilHealth na pag nakuha yung B and C na yun po, sir, is going to be treated as a trust liability. Hindi po siya magiging premium contribution. So the treatment of the two will be different from the point of view of PhilHealth.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Now, so you're saying, with respect to A, the collections from A, the syntax law, what the government is doing is that the collection here in respect to A is the one that will be given in F.
No, Your Honor, it will be part of the amounts given under F.
Yes. So
Yes.
whatever is the subsidy of government to PhilHealth to answer for the indirect contributors, ang pera na yan, galing yan sa A. Yan ang sinasabi mo.
Galing po sa A plus other resources
Plus other.
of government.
Probably
Yes.
the bulk will be coming from A. Now, however, what I'm saying is that A is independent of F. Because Section 37 enumerates the sources. If A should be used to fill up F, A should be a subparagraph of F. That is how English should be made or crafted. Di ba? Ganun lang kasimple yan eh. Oh, now, with respect to B and C, may collection dyan sa PAGCOR, may collection dyan sa PCSO. Nasaan na yan? Was it remitted to PhilHealth? The total amount remitted to PhilHealth from the National or General Fund?
It is with the Treasury, Your Honor. Only 41 billion pesos has been included
So
in
precisely.
the GAA.
So what you're saying, nag-collect kayo sa PAGCOR, nag-collect kayo sa PCSO. Yes, a portion was remitted to PhilHealth, but not the total amount. Because B and C is very clear in saying that the funds raised for this purpose, PCSO, PAGCOR, Charity Fund, shall be transferred to PhilHealth at the end of each quarter, subject to the usual budgeting, accounting, and auditing rules. My understanding of usual budgeting, accounting, and auditing rules does not include reducing the amount. It may refer to creating a ledger, a journal, whatever it is, but does not include the power to reduce the amount collected from PAGCOR or even PCSO. Do you agree with me?
Yes, Your Honor. And
So therefore-
I would like to highlight that there is no reduction in the allocations going, set aside for PhilHealth under those collections. Whatever happens, 85 billion is still 85 billion. Whatever happens, 6.8 billion is still 6.8 billion. What is at issue here is the timing with which those funds will be given.
No, the timing is stated here. At the end of each quarter. That's the directive there. So that it should be a regular thing from the national government to transfer it to PhilHealth. So, I would like to know from PhilHealth, natatanggap ba niyo yung pera from PAGCOR? Natatanggap ba niyo yung pera from PCSO? Now, very clear from B and C here that you should receive this quarterly to help increase benefit packages. Natatanggap ba nila?
No, because it's all
So
subject
therefore,
to GAA.
if they do not receive this, as you had admitted, my interpretation here, this was violated. Hindi kayo nagbigay ng pera sa PhilHealth galing sa PAGCOR or galing sa Charity Fund and PCSO.
Your Honor, let me go back to our previous discussion on the meaning of special funds.
Yes.
Yes, as I discussed yesterday, we have that kind of restrictions on special funds if they are actually created by law. So, in other words, while we have this provision stating that this amount should be allocated for this purpose, but it is likewise predicated on the necessity for determining that amount, which is the prerogative of Congress, then I guess, Your Honor, since there was no special fund created by law for these purposes, then it really goes into the general type of soft earmark, which means to say that this will have to be the policy guide for the Congress in determining the amounts to go to PhilHealth and to the Department of Health.
Yes.
So it retains that discretion, Your Honor, to determine the amount.
You mentioned special funds, so I'll go to that. I have a question there. Under the Constitution, dinefine naman yung special fund. Di ba? As long as the purpose is to collect, but my clear reading of the Constitution does not require that it should be created by law. Walang nakalagay dyan. If you go to the other provisions of the Constitution, may nakalagay dyan, as provided for by law, dynasty, as provided by Congress, etc. kung gusto ng Congress yun, kung gusto ng Constitutional Commission din, they could have included a provision that a special fund will be a special fund if it is created by law, but nothing appears in that particular section. So therefore, if a simple reading of that provision, the requirement of having a law to back up the creation of a special fund that apparently government is insisting does not appear in the Constitution.
Yes, Your Honor, it does not appear in the Constitution, but the fact remains that laws were passed which made this a requirement. We're referring to PD 1234, to the revised administrative code. There are certain provisions on the creation of special funds. In other words, the general rule will be all income of government agencies will have to go to the National Treasury, except such funds as may be created, special funds, fiduciary funds, and same fiduciary relate special, and trust funds as may be created by law. So I agree with you, it's not in the Constitution, but the fact remains that there are laws that govern the creation of special funds.
Okay. I just thank you for your answers. I'd just like to follow up the question earlier with respect to unprogrammed appropriation from our amicus. My understanding is that, as mentioned earlier, you have a unprogrammed programs, but wala pang pondo. Within the year, kung may collection, whether debt, etc., additional taxes, yan ang pagpupuno ng unprogrammed appropriations, right? Okay. However, tapos na yung budget by then. Wala nang role ang Congress. It is now the executive that will implement it, right?
Your Honor, are you asking me?
No, siya na.
sorry.
Thank you very much for your answers. Okay na, you're free to...
Hello.
Your Honor, on the question on sino yung mag-i-implement, yes, it's the executive
It
branch.
is the executive. So if within the year, kagaya nangyari dito, they were able to collect 100 billion from PDIC, in this 60 billion from Philhealth, it was the executive who allocated the money to the unprogrammed appropriations.
Essentially, sir, yes.
Yes. So, kung meron tayong, let us say, sagaan natin, meron tayong 30 nakalista na unprogrammed appropriation, the executive will now say, oh, itong pera na ito pupunta sa number 4, itong pera na ito pupunta sa number 8, etc., etc.
Yes, Your Honor. But for the special provision of the unprogrammed appropriations, I think Congress also specified a level of prioritization for what to fund.
So that's my question. In the unprogrammed GAA, meron bang order of preference as to the unprogrammed appropriations? Na meaning, let us say, may priority ba ang number 1 sa number 2? Let us say number 1 needs 100 billion. Nakakolekta ka ng 110. Yung 110 na yon, ibibigay mo lahat sa number 1. No discretion on the part of the President to choose number 5.
The executive branch can still do that po.
Yes.
Because the special provision, even if the special provision says that there is prioritization, it has a collatilla that says notwithstanding the prioritization, the President can still fund
Now,
anything essentially.
You don't
from the
find
list.
that unconstitutional because the allocation of budget, it is the power of the purse. It belongs to Congress, principally the House. Now what we are doing here in unprogrammed appropriation, it is the President now determining sino sa unprogrammed appropriation ang uunahin ko. You don't find anything wrong there?
From my perspective, Your Honor, I think there is a problem there because it's essentially a delegation of congressional authority of the power of the purse to the President.
Is that not an unlawful delegation? You're delegating power to the President to allocate funds. na dapat yan sa Kongreso yan. Yan ang the only source, the biggest power of Congress is the power of the purse. Ito, dinidelegate niya na because of this one to the President. So you agree with me, there's something wrong there.
I agree with you, Your Honor.
Okay, now, I would like to end my questions. But before I end, I would like to say something that I hope these cases before us, namura tayong mga tao, no? And from the President, very refreshing to hear that they want to get back the trust of the people. I give you all my support. Get the trust of the people. And increase their benefits. You'll be the next Secretary of Health. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Justice Richico.
Just a couple of questions.
Justice Ricky would want to ask.
I'm sorry,
additional-
I overlooked my notes yesterday
Okay.
and I missed
Sige,
this question.
please
Dalawa
proceed.
lang naman po.
Sige,
Anyway,
go
can I request Professor Olbir Holon to please use the microphone. You're from, fluent in Filipino, sir. Tagalog, Okay na kayo? Yeah, okay. Anyway,
Try, I'll subukan po.
masyadong yung usapan, intense, tsaka passionate, too emotional. Medyo ninervyos ako ng konti, Professor. Mas malalim yung topic nila, medyo nose bleeding. Kaya if ever, baka magpa-check up ako mamaya. Kailangan kong tulong ng Philhealth for nose bleeding at saka nervyos. Yes, Professor, I have gone over your profile or resume on Google, and I was so impressed by your credentials. Wala Google. But more than your fantastic or excellent credentials, I admire you so much because you were a former professor of Senior Associate Justice Jonen, who in turn was a former professor of some of the lawyers representing the petitioners. Right? And I'm sure that if your own professors are still alive and listening today, they are very proud of your academic and scholastic achievements. Anyway, I have an initial question, and you may decline to answer on the ground of perhaps self-incrimination. This has no bearing at all on the issues being discussed this afternoon. But I have to ask this question just the same, if only to satisfy my curiosity. Would you consider Justice Jonen a legendary legal luminary and one of the most brilliant members of the court as your best student? No, wag niyo sumagot. Joke lang, sir. Anyway, that is my question, sir. Serious na to. Okay. As a health economics expert with high level of knowledge on public health issues, sir, you possess not only expertise in assessing the current state of the country's healthcare system, but also a profound understanding of how a system should be implemented to achieve true universality. Sige siya, I'll fast track. Kasi hindi ko na ituloy. Considering the specific facts of this case, andito naman kayo from day one, and drawing from your impartial professional judgment, what impact will the transfer of Philhealth funds to the national treasury have on the country's pursuit of a universal healthcare system?
Two answers.